On my son's wedding day, I discover the truth about his wife. That morning I stood frozen in the hotel hallway. The champagne glass slipped through my fingers before I could even taste it. My silk dress suddenly too tight, the sound of laughter from the reception fading into white noise. Just seconds ago, I had been smiling, proud, watching my only son Marcus marry the woman he loved. Now, pressed against the wall outside the bridal suite, I had just heard something that made my blood turn to ice. "God, I can't believe we actually pulled this off," a woman's voice said. It was Vanessa, my new daughter-in-law. That old woman signed over the beach house deed last week. Marcus has no idea I convinced her to put it in both our names. My heart hammered against my ribs. I clutched my purse, fighting the urge to burst through that door. Another voice responded, one I recognized as Vanessa's sister, Victoria. "You're brilliant. What about the rest of her properties?" Vanessa laughed, cold and sharp. "Give me 6 months. I'll have everything." If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments section where you're listening to my revenge story from. I want to know how far it has reached. I backed away from the door, my heels clicking softly on the marble floor. My hands trembled as I steadied myself against the wall. The beach house. The property my late husband Thomas and I had bought 30 years ago in Cape May. The place where Marcus learned to swim, where we spent every summer watching sunsets from the porch. I had signed it over just last week, believing Vanessa when she said it would help with their mortgage plans. She had sat in my kitchen, tears in her eyes, talking about wanting to build a family legacy. I had been so touched by her words, so happy that Marcus had found someone who valued family. What a fool I had been. The hotel corridor stretched before me, lined with paintings of seaside scenes that now mocked me. I could hear music from the reception, the band playing something upbeat and joyful. My son was down there, dancing, celebrating, completely unaware that his wife was a snake. I walked slowly back toward the reception hall, but I could not make myself go inside. Instead, I turned left and found myself in the hotel garden. The October air was cool, and fairy lights twinkled in the trees. I sat on a stone bench, my mind racing. I thought about the past 8 months since Marcus had introduced me to Vanessa. She had been perfect. Too perfect, I realized now. The way she always complimented my cooking, asked about my childhood, and admired the family photos on my walls. She had studied me like a textbook, learning exactly what to say and do. And I had eaten it up, desperate for a daughter after years of being Marcus's only parent. Thomas had died when Marcus was just 12. I had raised our son alone, working 2 jobs to keep him in good schools. I had sacrificed everything to give him opportunities. Now, at 68, I was watching my legacy being stolen by a woman who saw me as nothing more than a bank account. The sound of footsteps made me look up. It was my younger brother, Raymond, still holding his champagne glass from the toast. "There you are, Patricia," he said, his voice concerned. "I saw you leave in a hurry. Is everything okay?" I wanted to tell him. Raymond had always been protective of me, especially after Thomas died. But something held me back. If I spoke the words out loud, they would become real. The betrayal would be confirmed. Instead, I forced a smile. I just needed some air. "It's been an emotional day." Raymond sat beside me, studying my face. He had always been able to read me. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I turned away, watching the fairy lights flicker. "Maybe I have." He waited, giving me space to speak. When I didn't, he squeezed my shoulder gently. "Whatever it is, you know I'm here." I nodded, unable to trust my voice. After Raymond left, I stayed in the garden for another 20 minutes, thinking, planning. By the time I returned to the reception, I had made a decision. I would not confront Vanessa tonight. I would not ruin Marcus's wedding day with accusations and drama. but I would not be a victim either. I had not survived widowhood, financial struggles, and raising a child alone just to be taken advantage of now. I found my table and sat down, accepting congratulations from relatives and friends. I smiled, nodded, and played the part of the happy mother of the groom. But inside, I was already 3 steps ahead. I watched Vanessa across the room, her white dress glowing under the chandelier lights. She was beautiful, I had to admit. Tall and graceful, with dark hair swept into an elegant updo. She laughed at something Marcus said, touching his arm affectionately. To anyone watching, they looked like the perfect couple. But I knew better now. I knew that behind those warm brown eyes was a calculating mind, already counting my money, already planning how to extract more. The next morning, I woke early in my house on Maple Street. The same house where I had raised Marcus, where every room held memories of scraped knees and homework struggles and goodnight kisses. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, the October sunlight streaming through the lace curtains. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Thanks for everything yesterday, Mom. We're heading to the airport for our honeymoon. Love you." I stared at the message, feeling a stab of pain. Marcus was a good man. He had grown into someone I was proud of, someone who worked hard as an architect and treated people with kindness. He had no idea what kind of person he had married. But I could not protect him from this. He was 35 years old enough to make his own choices and face his own consequences. What I could do was protect myself and what I had built. I opened my laptop and searched for the number I needed. Within minutes, I was on the phone with James Mitchell, the lawyer who had handled Thomas's estate. James agreed to meet me that afternoon at his office downtown. I drove through the city streets, past the coffee shop where Marcus used to work during college, past the park where we used to feed ducks on Sunday mornings. Everything looked the same, but I felt completely different. James's office was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building. He greeted me with his usual warm handshake, his gray beard neatly trimmed, his eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Patricia, wonderful to see you. Though I have to say, I'm curious why you needed such an urgent meeting the day after your son's wedding." I sat in the leather chair across from his desk and got straight to the point. "I need to change my will, James. Completely restructure it." His eyebrows raised slightly, but he pulled out a legal pad without question. "All right. Walk me through what you're thinking." I took a deep breath and began to explain. For the next hour, I outlined my plan. My estate was worth approximately $2 million. The beach house in Cape May, my home on Maple Street, the rental property on Oak Avenue, my retirement accounts, and the life insurance policy. I had always planned to leave everything to Marcus. It was simple, straightforward, what any parent would do. But not anymore. "I want to establish a trust," I told James. "The money will be there for Marcus, but only under specific conditions. And nothing, absolutely nothing, goes directly to his wife." James wrote carefully, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I mentioned what I had overheard at the wedding, his expression hardened. "I'm sorry you're dealing with this, Patricia. But I think you're being smart. Let me draft something that protects your assets while still providing for Marcus." We discussed terms for over an hour. The trust would release funds to Marcus for specific purposes like education, medical needs, or business investments. But Vanessa would have no access, no control, no claim to any of it. As I was leaving James's office, my phone rang. It was Vanessa. I stared at the screen for 3 rings before answering. "Hello? Patricia, hi. It's Vanessa." Her voice was warm and cheerful. "I just wanted to thank you again for everything you did for the wedding. The flowers you arranged were absolutely beautiful." I leaned against the building wall, watching cars pass on the street below. "You're welcome, dear. Marcus and I are at the airport now. We're so excited for Paris." I can't believe we're actually going. I closed my eyes, remembering how I had contributed $10,000 toward their honeymoon. Money I had saved carefully from my pension. Have a wonderful time, I said, keeping my voice steady. Oh, we will. And Patricia, I wanted to ask you something. When we get back, could we sit down and talk about your financial planning? I've been reading about estate management, and I have some ideas that might help you. My grip tightened on the phone. The audacity of this woman was stunning. She was not even trying to hide her intentions anymore. That's very thoughtful of you, Vanessa. We can discuss it when you return. After hanging up, I sat in my car for a long time, just breathing. Vanessa had no idea that I knew. She thought she was cleverly manipulating a lonely old widow. She thought I was easy prey. Over the next week, while Marcus and Vanessa were in Paris, I took action. I met with James twice more to finalize the new will. I contacted my bank and updated all beneficiary designations on my accounts. I even hired a private investigator named Carlos to look into Vanessa's background. I needed to know who I was really dealing with. Carlos was recommended by Raymond, who knew people from his years working in law enforcement. Within 3 days, Carlos had information that made my stomach turn. Carlos met me at a quiet diner on the edge of town. He slid a folder across the table, his expression grim. Mrs. Patterson, what I found is not pretty. I opened the folder and started reading. Vanessa had been married before. Twice. Both marriages had ended within 2 years, and both ex-husbands had filed complaints about financial abuse. One claimed she had emptied their joint account and disappeared. The other said she had forged his signature on loan documents. Neither case had gone to trial because the men had settled quietly, apparently wanting to just move on with their lives. There's more, Carlos said, pointing to another document. She's been using multiple credit cards under different variations of her name. She has significant debt, about $75,000 that I could track. I felt sick. This was worse than I thought. Vanessa was not just opportunistic. She was a professional. This was what she did. She found vulnerable targets and bled them dry. What about her sister, Victoria? I asked. Carlos flipped to another page. Victoria has a cleaner record, but she's filed for bankruptcy twice. My guess is they worked together. Victoria probably helped scout potential targets. I closed the folder, my hands shaking. Does Marcus know any of this? I doubt it. Vanessa is careful. She creates a whole new identity for each relationship. The name she's using now, Vanessa Marie Hayes, is not even her real name. She was born Vanessa Marie Kohler. I sat back, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. My son had married a complete stranger. A con artist. A predator. I need copies of everything, I told Carlos. And I need you to keep investigating. I want to know every detail of her life. Carlos nodded. What are you planning to do? I looked out the diner window at the gray November sky. I'm going to protect my son, even if he does not want to be protected. Marcus and Vanessa returned from Paris on a cold Tuesday afternoon. I had invited them for dinner that Friday, wanting to see them in person, to look Vanessa in the eye now that I knew the truth. I spent all day preparing Marcus's favorite meal, pot roast with roasted vegetables and homemade apple pie. When they arrived, Vanessa hugged me warmly, pressing a small wrapped gift into my hands. We brought you something from Paris, she said, her smile bright and genuine looking. I unwrapped it to find a delicate scarf, cream-colored with blue flowers. It's beautiful, I said, and I meant it. The scarf was lovely. Expensive, even. Probably bought with my honeymoon money. We sat down to eat, and Marcus talked excitedly about the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, the cafes along the Seine. Vanessa added details, laughing at stories, touching his hand across the table. They looked happy. That was the cruelest part. Marcus genuinely loved her. After dinner, Vanessa helped me clear the dishes while Marcus went to look at something in the garage. This was the moment I had been both dreading and anticipating. We stood at the sink together, Vanessa washing while I dried. "Patricia, I'm so glad we have this time alone," she said, her voice soft. "I wanted to talk to you about something important." Here it comes, I thought. "Of course, dear." She turned off the water and faced me, her expression serious. "I know you've worked so hard your whole life. You raised Marcus on your own, managed everything after Thomas passed. That takes such strength." I nodded, waiting. "I've been thinking about your future. You're getting older, and managing multiple properties must be exhausting. Have you ever considered simplifying things? Maybe selling the rental property or putting the beach house in a trust that we could help manage?" My fingers tightened on the dish towel. Her audacity was breathtaking. She was not even waiting 6 months like she had told her sister. I turned to face her fully, studying her face. Up close, I could see the calculation behind her warm expression. "Actually, Vanessa, I've recently met with my lawyer. I've made some changes to protect my assets for the future." Something flickered in her eyes, just for a second. "Oh? What kind of changes?" "Just some standard estate planning. Making sure everything is properly structured." I watched her carefully. "Why do you ask?" She recovered quickly, her smile returning. "No reason. I just want to make sure you're being smart about things. You know, protecting yourself from people who might take advantage." The irony was so thick I almost laughed. Instead, I just smiled. "Don't worry, Vanessa. I'm very aware of people who might try to take advantage. I've learned to spot them quite well." Her smile tightened slightly. Before she could respond, Marcus came back inside, and the moment passed. But a line had been drawn. Vanessa knew that I was not going to be as easy as she thought. Over the next few weeks, Vanessa made several more attempts. She suggested I add her name to my checking account for emergency purposes. She brought over papers for me to sign, claiming they were just insurance forms but which James later identified as property transfer documents. She even tried to convince me to take out a reverse mortgage, telling me it would give me more cash flow in retirement. Each time, I deflected. I was polite, always smiling, but firm. And each time, I watched her frustration grow. She was running out of time and patience. Her debts were mounting, and I was not cooperating with her plans. Then, in early December, Marcus called me. His voice was strained, worried. "Mom, can you come over? I need to talk to you about something." My heart sank. I drove to their apartment, a small 2-bedroom place in a newer building downtown. When I arrived, Marcus was alone. Vanessa was supposedly at her sister's house. Marcus made tea, his movements jerky and nervous. We sat at his small kitchen table, and I could see the stress in his face. "Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." I braced myself. "Of course. Has Vanessa been asking you for money?" My pulse quickened. "Why would you ask that?" He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he had done since childhood when upset. "I found some documents on her desk. Credit card statements, collection notices. She has massive debt, Mom. Like $70,000 that I knew nothing about." So he was finally seeing the truth. "I'm sorry, Marcus. Did you know about this?" His voice cracked. "When did you find out?" I chose my words carefully. "I learned some things after the wedding. I've been investigating quietly because I wanted to be sure before I said anything." His face crumbled. "What else? What else did you find?" I pulled out a copy of Carlos's report from my purse and slid it across the table. Marcus read in silence, his face growing paler with each page. When he finished, he just sat there, staring at nothing. "She's been married before," he finally said, his voice hollow. "Twice. And she lied about everything." "I'm sorry, son." He looked up at me, his eyes red. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Would you have believed me? On your wedding day? Or even a week after?" He shook his head slowly. "Probably not. I would have thought you were being overprotective or jealous." We sat in painful silence. Then Marcus asked the question I had been dreading. "What do I do now?" I reached across the table and took his hand. "That's your choice, Marcus. I can't make it for you. But whatever you decide, I'll support you." He squeezed my hand, tears finally spilling down his cheeks. "I love her, Mom. Or I love who I thought she was. I don't even know anymore." My heart broke for him. This was the pain I had wanted to protect him from. Marcus decided to confront Vanessa that evening. He asked me to stay, wanting a witness to whatever was about to unfold. When Vanessa came home, she was surprised to see me there. Her smile faltered when she saw our expressions. "What's going on?" Marcus stood up, holding the credit card statements. "I need you to explain these." I watched as Vanessa's face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Shock, fear, calculation, then finally tears. "Marcus, I can explain. I was going to tell you, I just was waiting for the right time." "And your previous marriages?" His voice was hard now. "Were you going to tell me about those too?" She looked at me then, and her expression turned cold. You've been digging into my past, turning my husband against me." "I've been protecting my son," I said calmly. "Something I should have done more carefully from the beginning." Vanessa's mask finally dropped completely. The warm, loving woman disappeared, replaced by someone cold and angry. "You have no idea what you've done," Vanessa hissed at me. I was actually making this work. I was actually starting to care about him. Care about him? I stood up. "You've been trying to steal from me since before the wedding. You've lied about everything. That's not caring, Vanessa. That's manipulation." She laughed bitterly. "You think you're so smart, Patricia. But you're just a bitter old woman who can't stand seeing her son happy." Marcus stepped between us. "Enough. Vanessa, I want you to leave. We're done. You can't just throw me out. This is my home too." "Actually," Marcus said, his voice shaking but firm, "the lease is in my name. You have no legal claim here. I want you out by tomorrow." Vanessa looked between us, realizing she had lost. "Fine. But you'll regret this, both of you." After she stormed out, Marcus collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands. I sat beside him, rubbing his back like I had when he was little. The divorce process took 8 months. Vanessa fought for everything, but because Marcus had discovered her fraud before they had been married a year, and because I had documented everything through Carlos's investigation, the judge ruled in Marcus's favor. Vanessa got nothing. The beach house remained mine. My other properties were untouched. My retirement accounts were safe. Through it all, Marcus stayed strong. He went to therapy, worked long hours, and slowly started to rebuild his life. I watched him carefully, worried about depression or bitterness, but he surprised me. "I learned something important, Mom," he told me one evening over dinner at my house. "I learned that love isn't just about feelings. It's about trust and honesty and really knowing someone." I rushed into things with Vanessa because I was lonely, not because I really knew her. I squeezed his hand. "That's very wise, son. And I learned that you were right to protect your assets." I was actually angry at first when I found out about the will changes. But now I understand. You weren't trying to control me. You were protecting yourself, which you have every right to do. By the following spring, life had found a new normal. Marcus had moved into a better apartment and was dating someone new, a woman named Claire who worked as a teacher. I had met her twice and liked her immediately. She was genuine, warm, and had no interest in my financial situation. Vanessa had apparently moved to another state, according to Carlos's final report. I hoped she had learned something from her failure with Marcus, but I doubted it. People like her rarely change. As for me, I had learned my own lessons. I had learned that protecting yourself was not selfish. That setting boundaries was not cruel. That sometimes love meant making hard choices that others might not understand. I kept the new will in place, with the trust structure that protected Marcus while preventing anyone from exploiting him. James had done an excellent job making it ironclad. One Saturday afternoon, Marcus and Claire came over for lunch. We sat in the garden, eating sandwiches and laughing at Claire's stories about her kindergarten students. Watching Marcus smile, really smile, made everything worth it. The investigation costs, the stress, the difficult conversations, all of it had been necessary. "Mom," Marcus said suddenly, "I never properly thanked you." "For what?" "For being willing to be the bad guy. For protecting me even when it meant I might hate you for a while. For having the courage to do what needed to be done." I felt tears prick my eyes. "You're my son, Marcus. I would do anything for you." Claire touched my arm gently. "He's told me everything. About Vanessa, about what you discovered, how you handled it. You're an amazing woman, Patricia." I smiled at her. "I just did what any mother would do." "No," Marcus said firmly. "Most mothers would have kept quiet or confronted Vanessa publicly or tried to force me to leave her. You were smart about it. You protected yourself first, gathered evidence, and waited for me to see the truth myself. That took real wisdom." That evening, after Marcus and Claire left, I sat on my porch watching the sunset. The same porch where Thomas and I used to sit, planning our future, dreaming about Marcus's life. Thomas would have been proud of how Marcus turned out. Despite the detour with Vanessa, he was still the good man we had raised. My phone buzzed with a text from Raymond. "Heard through the grapevine that Vanessa tried to pull the same thing with someone in Florida. Apparently they did their homework and sent her packing. Thought you'd want to know." I smiled. Good. Maybe my standing up to her had made her more cautious, easier to spot. Maybe I had helped protect someone else's family without even knowing it. The October evening was cool, exactly like the night of Marcus's wedding when my world had turned upside down. But I was not the same person I had been that night. I was stronger now, more aware, more willing to trust my instincts. Looking back, I realized that overhearing Vanessa's conversation was both the worst and best thing that could have happened. Yes, it was painful. Yes, it had caused months of stress and conflict. But it has also saved my family's legacy. It had saved Marcus from years of manipulation and financial ruin. And it has taught both of us valuable lessons about trust, boundaries, and protecting what matters most. The beach house in Cape May still stood, ready for future grandchildren to learn to swim in its waters. My home on Maple Street still held its memories safely. The rental property continued to provide income for my retirement. Everything I had worked for remained intact, protected by the decisions I made that awful wedding night. As I went inside and locked the door behind me, I felt at peace. I had changed my will that night, yes. But more importantly, I had changed the entire trajectory of what could have been a devastating family tragedy. And that was worth everything.